Welcome to Trippin Tales from the Toadstool. I'm your host, Kimberly Dawn, and today I tell part 3 of my own journey tripping into the afterlife under the influence of ayahuasca. Please listen to part 1 and 2 if you haven't. Back in my vision, coming out of the corner of the room was an incredible light. It drew me in, and I forgot about Dark Mark and started toward it without thought. And this figure appeared, and it was Mark, and it stopped me dead in my tracks. Poor choice of words, I suppose. And I turned back toward where Dark Mark was, and he was gone. Immediately, I ran into Light Mark's arms, and he was awaiting me with such a beautiful smile. The telepathic exchange began, and he was so happy that I had found a way to visit him. He was also happy that I was continuing to remember who he really was and not what he had been at the time of his death. I didn't want to let go. It felt so good to be in his arms again, but he had to go back. And as I held on tight, he slowly slipped away from me, and I found myself back in the real world, looking up at that damn ceiling again. This moment I had with Light Mark was so incredibly real that coming back home and living here became a chore. I was living in the repercussions of finding what I had gone looking for. It made me want to be there and not here. Though by this time, in my grief process, I didn't have any desire to hurt myself to speed up death. Somehow I knew that it was important to be here from these experiences and not there, and I was lucky to have a body to live in. Even so, this understanding did not keep my heart from longing for more Mark and to be there in the light instead of here feeling alone in my own darkness. I processed all I had experienced in the months that came after the pod room visions. I came to understand that the afterlife was showing me I could live life forward, remembering the love and happiness of the past 26 years, or I could look backward and focus on how it all ended, the negative moments in our married life. The telepathic understandings Pod Kim had shared with me during the black and white cylinder show connected the understanding that if I chose light and loving thoughts, then somehow that also allowed Mark to be on the lighter side of his reality, and vice versa. Dark thoughts influenced his reality to be darker. And the cylinder was simply a visual of how I could understand that I could choose to pull dark and light and all shades of gray into the present moment with me. It is I who had control of what my reality looked like, depending on what I was feeling, negative or positive. Also, I came away from this experience knowing I am still connected to all those who find themselves navigating the afterlife that left before me. And I call this entanglement. The significance of my heart being the projector of the cylinder tube visions was to show me the thoughts I carried in my head projected a feeling into my heart. That feeling dictated how I carried myself through my days, crying, smiling, laughing. As I allowed my feelings to control my life, I was also transmitting, for lack of a better word, to the reality Mark was now existing in the afterlife. When he received feelings of my love or my sad and angry feelings, this affected his reality, as it affected mine. We were still very much entangled and responsible for healing our own trauma together. I have been somewhere that showed me we are not separated after death, as we may think. The entanglement is still happening. It just looks different. If I am transmitting loving thoughts and memories, he is receiving them and able to live in a place of higher frequency, happier frequency. And when I am having a dark day, it seems Mark chooses to put on his dark hoodie and remembers how he hurt me and his family. He beats himself up every day for every wrong decision he ever made, because I too am beating myself up for every wrong decision I ever made. He is now sitting in pain because I'm sitting in pain. And when I sit in my shame, he has to sit in his. When I sit in my sadness, he has to sit in his. But when I feel our incredible loving times together, he gets to feel those moments too. The darkest parts can simply be left in the past, is what this vision was all about. There is no reason to carry them into the future with me. or him. Processing this vision and coming to the understanding that Mark was not trapped in some terrible place, but instead existed similarly to me, in his own hell, when the feeling of pain became overwhelming, which is somewhat dictated by the feelings of those still here entangled with him. I understood now what a conscious choice I was making every day to feel good or bad about my relationship with my husband. I could choose to look backward into the beauty we lived and could leave the rest of the story to just simply go dormant. The rest of the story was not what I was required to continue to carry with me into the future now that he was gone. The pain of the past would have hung me too if I'd allowed it. It was time to forgive, accept, and allow a new feeling to fill up the space that pain had eaten away. Be careful what you choose today as you are creating your past, which you pull from to create today, which manifests into your future. I know this seems like a lot of words that make no sense, but it really does. Give this quote a moment of your time. Replay it over and over until it does make sense to you. We are what we believe. We are all connected. Our feelings, thoughts, and words affect one another in a much greater capacity than I had ever known. It was becoming easier to see if a pattern appeared in my life that was not self-serving but self-loathing, so I could change that. I could choose to pull a different thought to me, which gave me a different feeling. This caused me to have a very different reaction in that moment. Eventually, this would lead me to a very different future. And this is how I would create my new life pattern. I would embark on a new journey. I had to figure out what life looked like to live here without Mark. I didn't have to relive the pain from the past. I could lay it down and leave it be. I would go through my days mindful of my words and actions. I would work at being mindful of every thought that entered my head, and I would replace it if it wasn't for my highest good or Mark's. This was the work that awaited me. I would go on to have dozens of plant medicine experiences leading to the afterlife, and I will eventually share them all with you in time. This experience opened the door to my new life, and I will always be grateful. Thank you for listening to my personal journey. Please like and share and comment. And please send your stories to KimberlyDawnCanada@gmail.com, and I'll be happy to tell them. Expand your mind, folks. We live in a multiverse. Suspend your disbelief and consider all things are possible. I'm your host, Kimberly Dawn. Thank you for listening.